This is Cydni.
And I'm Sher. And each week we get together to share with you a message of hope.
It is through our own study and our personal experiences that we offer the reminder to not only seek the light,
but be the light. You can find peace, and there is hope.
And as long as one of us is slightly caffeinated, there will be laughter.
Today's episode is happiness.
And we're so glad you're here.
I'm forging my way through the tip top. I'm living my life through the drip drop.
Okay, Cydni, tell me what your definition of happiness is.
I want to tell you first about the most happy I've seen my child in a very long time. This is a very special story you're going to really love. This happened yesterday, and we are on our way to school. We pulled into the school, and the girls get out first. Typically, Titus stays in the car. He likes any chance he can get a little bit one-on-one time, he'll take advantage of it. So when we pull into the school, the girls love it. They can't wait to go see their teacher, and they hop out of the car like while we're moving. I'm like, wait. Titus, on the other hand, can't get out. He's like, I'm just going to sit here. I need a few minutes. And then he'll ask questions about life and death so he doesn't have to get out. It's been a thing where the girls get out. We move all the way forward to the very front of the line and we sit there a couple of minutes. So this happened, but it was snowing and my mind was so busy with the things that I needed to do immediately to get everything done for the day. And he was talking to me and I was like, okay, well, you got to go, bud, because it's time. And he's like, yeah, I know. And then I don't know what happened, but suddenly I just left. I'm like, it's time to go, right? Because I've got to get home to do this and that and this. I'm halfway home and I look over and Titus is still in the car and he's got the biggest smile I have ever seen in my life on that kid's face. And I said, wait, why are you in the car still? And he's like, you drove away. And I was like, I sat there for 5 minutes first. And he's like, well, you just drove away and I didn't want to mess you up.
He doesn't want to ruin your groove.
He's like, you just got to focus in, drive safely. It's snowing. So anyway, I drove away from carpool with the kid still in the car. Not just that, but he was in the front seat.
Every child now wants to have a mom with ADD. They're like begging, please, mom, have ADD.
I know. They're like, please be unmedicated. The ADHD.
Oh, I apologize for misdiagnosing
from the brain
you.
scans. I had to pay money for those brain scans. So when I think of happiness from now on, I will measure level 10 being Titus's face when I forgot to drop him off at carpool for school. And he's like, we could just go do something. And I was like, you're going to school. Because level 1 was my face. I'm not happy. So I forgot to drop Titus off and he was so happy about it. So that's happiness. I stumbled across a new audiobook that actually ended up being perfect for this topic of happiness. It's Build the Life You Want by Arthur C. Brooks. He has been studying the science of happiness for years and years and years. He goes through different definitions of happiness and different cultures, different people describe it so broadly. Actually, what do you think of when you think of happiness? Define it, your own terms. What do you think of? What is happiness, Sher?
The words that pop into my head when you say happiness is joy, contentment, peace, gratitude. Those are the words that just kind of pop into my head. What pops into your head?
NyQuil, caffeine, when my yoga pants aren't too tight. That kind of stuff, Yeah. That makes me happy. When he talks about the Western world, it's defined as excitement and achievement. And I will say, I think that I fell into that category, that I'm guilty of thinking of happiness with success and what you've accomplished. So if I've accomplished something great, then I deserve to be happy. But after reading this book, I'm going to change this philosophy in my head. But the Eastern world, their philosophy is more contentment. And I liked the word calm.
Oh, that is a good word.
I thought so too. And then in some cultures, they go with good fortune, luck. It's more of a situational, not you take control, but what happens to you is happiness, which was interesting. And the one I loved the most was ancient Rome, was growth.
Oh, that is good.
Isn't that good? But then it just makes me think, I feel you have to accomplish things or do stuff in order to be happy.
I love those two different views. And I was thinking about that. And for me, I don't know if you know this, Cydni, but I'm a tad bit older than you.
I didn't.
Yeah, that's true. So
you're youthful.
Thank you. She just rolled her eyes.
Because I'm youthful too, like a teen. We talked about the eye rolling thing.
It's true. You're good at it. So with that, I feel like as you get older, I think you start maybe with a Western point of view about happiness. And then the older you get, it kind of starts rolling over into what he would say as an Eastern worldview. Because I know when I was a teenager, what made me happy was knowing how to perfectly peg my pants just right.
Peg your pants.
Peg my pants. You know, you roll them up just perfect.
I think the word peg means different things these days.
That's not the point, Cydni. The point is when you're growing up then.
That's what it was called.
Yeah. And you had to get it just perfect. And I was really good at it. And that's what made me happy.
Do you think you could do it today?
I think I could.
I dare you to try it today. Let me know how it goes.
Challenge accepted.
We'll do an update.
But that's what made me happy. So those were the types of things, like it mattered to me. I guess I never was really into clothes, but there were certain things that mattered to me. My pants rolled exactly right, that you had big 80s hair or whatever. But somehow along the way, it's not important anymore. I remember as a teenager looking at older people and thinking, why don't they care that they don't look cool? You got to look cool, right? And I'll tell you why. It's because when you get older, it's meaningless. It's childish and you just don't care. Do I look decent? Do I look nice? It's just feeling comfortable with who you are. And I think that happens as you get older. I feel that different things make you happy.
I think that's important to reflect on because it's true for myself as well, that things that really mattered to me in elementary or middle school or high school, it does change over time. And it's probably the way that life humbles us and knocks us down. And we are put in positions to recognize what matters and what has remained with us, even when everything else fades away or changes. Or maybe we look back on pictures. Maybe this is it, that we've lived long enough to look back at how we looked and recognize that we have no idea what's going on or how to do hair. And so we give up.
That's probably me. I realized I didn't know what I was doing and I gave up.
That was one of my viral tweets that still goes around, is that it's not that you don't care. It's just that you don't have any energy to care.
That's true.
It's not that I don't care. It's just I physically can't care because I need a nap. Something I liked because he talked about how hard it is to define it. And you can't really just put one word on it because people would put different words on it as we have. But he said that happiness has many components to it. So I thought of like a recipe does, because I'm a huge baker. I'm not. Actually, can I just tell you that once I tried to bake when I was a teen, I tried to make a cake from a box, you know, one of those where you don't have to do anything but add like 3 ingredients.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I made it and I was pretty excited to share it with my brothers. My brothers came in. I remember my oldest brother walked into the kitchen and he's like, why does it smell? And I was thinking he was going to say like a delicious chocolate cake, but he said like pine sol.
Oh no.
And then we looked over at where I left the mess, of course, and there was vegetable oil and pine sol next to each other where the cake was. So it went really fast from, my sister's amazing, she made us all a cake, to, are you trying to poison us? So anyway, I once used pine sol instead of vegetable oil to make my family a cake.
Wow.
I think the important thing to know is that it was an accident.
Do your brothers buy that?
No, they still, especially my oldest, he'll still retell the story with, remember when you tried to kill us? And then I say, if I was trying to, there's no try and kill.
Anyway, that was a happy story.
Okay. So with ingredients, if you're going to make a cake for real without pine sol, there's flour and baking soda and baking powder and other things that you would put in a cake if you baked one. But he said there are 3 components when it comes to happiness from his study and years of research. Number 1 is enjoyment. Number 2, satisfaction. Number 3 is purpose. And you have to have a bit of all of these in your life in order to have the recipe of happiness.
It makes it seem possible and feasible that you can be happy if it's just having 3 ingredients.
Unless you're out of stock.
Or unless you use pine sol.
I like how he broke them down. Enjoyment. He said that a lot of people think you have to have pleasure in order to be happy. But pleasure is a short-term situation. It's short-lived. But enjoyment, he says, is longer lasting. You're not always in a state of enjoyment, but it's more earned. With enjoyment, there is the urge for pleasure, but it has 2 additional components to it, communion and also awareness. He related this one to Thanksgiving. If you ate a whole Thanksgiving meal by yourself, that'd probably be pretty pleasurable because who doesn't love a good stuffing and gravy? It's delicious. But enjoyment would be if you ate a Thanksgiving meal with your family with your loved ones and you ate together, you talked, you made new memories, that's enjoyment. It's a deeper level, more sustaining. And one you could look back on with fondness, and the other one, you ate a delicious burrito and then you regret it later.
I'm really glad that is on the list because that describes why I lasted as a middle school teacher for such a long time. Being a middle school teacher had some really rough days, and some days it was really hard, but I really did enjoy it because I love those moments laughing with the kids. I love teaching the students and just seeing suddenly a light go on. You could just see it in their eyes, like they got a concept or they understood a new idea. And that's like an adrenaline rush for a teacher. It was so exciting. It's just sheer joy for the kids and the teacher to have that moment together. And that's why I lasted so long. It wasn't for the hard days. It was for those moments that was so full of joy and really sheer happiness. That's what kept me going back, is having those moments and just truly loving being in the classroom with those teenage little turds. I loved it.
I love that. It actually ties in really well with what he says about satisfaction, because he says it's the thrill of accomplishing a goal or getting through hard times. So that is perfect for getting through those middle school classes.
And one of the things that I learned from being at a school that did have some difficult things happen there, it made those moments that were good and happy so much better. Because when you're being drugged through hard times and it's just difficult.
I thought you were saying drugged.
Well, you could do that there too. But you could just, when those hard times came up and you're just fighting to get through it and things are so difficult, when those moments where there was just good things that happened and when kids understood or when they came back and said thank you, it was sheer joy because I really believe that everything has its opposites. And so when you're working at a place that is very difficult, that means you're also going to have those moments of joy. And that's, again, why I was able to stay there. And I think that's kind of how life is, though. When you have to work for it and you have to fight for it and you have to drag yourself through, it makes it so that when you have those happy moments, you recognize it and you can enjoy those moments.
I love that. It's perfect with what he says because he talks about it with getting a good grade. If you got an A by cheating, you don't get no satisfaction. He did add the song. He said, I can't get no satisfaction. He says, nay, you can. You can get satisfaction. You just can't keep it forever. It's fleeting because that's just how it works. You reach a goal and you want a new goal. That's the survivor in us and the growth in us. But he says that if you got a good grade from studying, that matters. There's a difference. Like you're saying, if you put in the work and you make the sacrifices, you will get not only enjoyment out of that, but also you'll get a satisfaction that's deep out of that, a certain steadiness in your own soul, proving to yourself that you're capable of accomplishing what you said you could and capable of putting in hard work for something you care about. And then he said something I love so much, cutting corners is a bad strategy. It ruined your ability to feel satisfied.
Again, this reminds me of being in the classroom. I love he used a test example. In our state, the students are required to pass a civics test in order to graduate from high school. And I gave that test in my class. So I would have students that would not study for any tests. They would do hardly anything because they thought they weren't smart enough, they weren't good enough, they weren't this enough. And so they didn't put forth any effort. But for that test, when they knew that they needed to get through that test in order to graduate from high school, they would study for it. And exactly what you said, that I saw students for the first time in their life not cut corners. They actually studied. And the feeling of accomplishment and satisfaction, it just spewed out of their whole aura. Some of them, literally, it was the first time that they put forth effort in studying for a test and actually saw a result that was positive. They saw effort in, effort out, and it just changed their whole education path because they realized that they were capable of doing hard things when it comes to their academic level. And I loved seeing that moment. So I got to see all of that in real life as a teacher.
That's perfect. And it leads into the last one, which is purpose, because they had a purpose to study for that test.
Exactly. And just having that purpose that I need this to graduate from high school, it changed everything. Like they hung on every word I said. I would be telling them, here are the things you need to know for your test. And I would give them a study guide and we'd review and review and review. And they would diligently do that with me. I couldn't get them to do that with other tests, but man, on that one, once they saw that too, it's amazing how their grades went up. Everybody's grade just was like, oh, wow, I can do it.
I love the comparison to what he's saying to your students, because this is where he's gathering this information. They studied all kinds of groups of people and ages, and they saw the same thing over and over, that with those three elements, if they saw pieces of these in their lives, then there was happiness in their life.
I agree with that. It did give them that sense of purpose and direction that they could do it. And I found a quote that I think sums this up. She said, "The opposite of happiness is not sadness. It is emptiness. It is feeling nothing, doing nothing, existing for no reason. A happy life will not be one devoid of sadness, but one filled with meaning, with doing things, with reasons for existing. Happiness then comes down to purpose." I really like that added on to what he said. I think you need those other steps as well. But having a purpose and a direction, that's what my students finally had. They had a reason, they had a purpose to take that test. That changed everything in some of them in their academic careers, because they realized they had a purpose, they had a direction, and they could graduate from high school. They were capable of doing it.
I love it. And it shows that there's every element present, because the enjoyment, there was a classroom environment. They did it with other people. There was a satisfaction of suffering for a purpose.
Yeah.
And the purpose, of course, was to get to the next level, which shaped their whole life.
I want to go back to that quote, what she said about having that purpose. If we look at this on a broader level, not just a test to graduate from high school, but for me, the bottom line is what makes it so that I don't feel empty. My reason for being is knowing that I am a child of God, and knowing my purpose here on earth is to get back home with my Heavenly Father. That changes everything. So if we act like we truly are God's child, and then we treat others like they are God's child, and our purpose is to help ourselves and each other to get back home to live with our Father again, that purpose changes everything in your course direction in your life. And that does give me a sense of purpose and satisfaction and enjoyment, because I can feel that peace and contentment knowing that I'm God's daughter.
But like any recipe, sometimes it comes out a little bit different. So you could have all these ingredients, but it doesn't mean you're going to have a perfect cake. And so even if you have all of these elements, there are times where you're just not going to feel perfectly happy. Something I really liked hearing from him was that we need to understand that happiness is not a constant state. And if you have that expectation that you're constantly going to be happy, then you're probably not going to feel very happy, because you're not going to reach that. And I liked the idea of understanding happiness in more of a scientific view, to understand what's going on in our minds. And I was thinking, as there are these three key ingredients to happiness, I did think to myself, it does feel like there's more available ingredients to unhappiness. Don't you think? Isn't it easier to list things that make you feel unhappy?
Yeah, I think so.
I could do that all day.
Mm-hmm.
So lots of ingredients for unhappiness. But I was thinking about some of the top ones I thought of immediately. Like immediately I thought of comparison. I feel like that makes me feel so unhappy. There's been times where I've been at the gym and I'm feeling pretty good about myself. Like, oh, I made it today and I didn't want to be here. But then you just see an incredibly fit human and you're lifting your 10 pounders and some chick comes over and lifts up the whole bench, throws it across the gym and roars, when that happens. And you're like, oh, maybe I'm not so strong. So when that stuff happens, I feel like it takes you out of the comparing who you were yesterday to who you are right now. And it takes you to look at where that person is. And that makes me feel unhappy and unsatisfied.
I completely agree with that. I think comparison is a huge one. For me, I'm going to go with the opposite of what I said earlier, is when I am feeling ungrateful, that really gets me down. When I feel like, oh, I'm so picked on, this happened, that happened, poor me, that is when I feel the most unhappy. Because truly, I have so much to be grateful for. Instead of counting my blessings, I'm counting my unhappy, I don't have this, poor me. That just gets me down more than anything. And this reminds me of a quote from President Gordon B. Hinckley. He said, "There is a terrible ailment of pessimism in the land. It's almost endemic. We're constantly fed a steady and sour diet of character assassination, fault finding, evil speaking of one another. I come with a plea that we stop seeking out the storms and enjoy more fully the sunlight. I'm suggesting that we accentuate the positive. I'm asking that we look a little deeper for the good, that we still our voices of insult and sarcasm, that we more generously compliment virtue and effort. And I think that is one of the keys for being happy is when we're constantly insulting and finding fault in other people, that is not happy for the other person or you. But if you can find things about other people to give them sincere compliments about their strengths, their virtues, their effort, cheer them on, that makes you happier. Years ago, I went to a basketball game and there was a player that everybody hated and the crowd would cheer and cheer and cheer and there was such happiness. And whenever this player would touch the ball, the whole crowd would boo. And it just got to the point where I just could not stop laughing because you could literally feel the happiness and then just this bitter boo. And it would just go from high to low just instantly. And all I could do was laugh because it was so hysterical that you wanted to bring that negative energy in when things were so positive because we don't like this player. It was just laughable to me. But in real life, it's not funny when you're the one getting booed and you're the one where people are ripping on you and others are getting a temporary pleasure out of that. It's not lasting and it just makes everyone, including the person doing the booing, them miserable too. I think that it's important that we try to remember that we should be treating each other in a way that's showing that we truly understand that we are God's children and treat them with that respect and that kindness.
That leads into something else that he said that I love so much. Again, because you can't be in a state of happiness all of the time. We have to let that expectation go. He says that contrary to previous assumption, you actually can be happy and unhappy at the same time. So like the crowd, the boos and hisses and the cheering, that is basically what's going on in our head all of the time.
Your head.
My head, all of the time. So we can live in a state of happiness and unhappiness in my head at the same time. It's science, so it's true. But he talked about the role of unhappiness. And I love that he gave purpose to unhappiness because that will help us be happier. Then he lists several reasons why unhappiness matters. One of the reasons was just if you have unhappiness in your life, then you more fully appreciate the happier times. So just like you got to hear the boos, it made the cheering that much more exciting because there was the balance. And he said that a lot of people, especially creators, create some of their most beautiful work and poetry and books and movies in a state of sadness and depression. You can muster up a new perspective and new thoughts and these deep, real, raw human emotions and feelings and share that for others to relate to, but not in a state of pure bliss. You couldn't do that, but you can in a state of rejection, depression, lack of love in your life or rejection. I'm saying that again. Is something going on in my life? Rejection. Did I mention rejection? I just have the word rejection in my mind. It's nothing to do with middle school to now.
That goes back to what I was saying, like working at the school that I did, are those highs and lows. Being sad and having a bad day at work made the really good days at work so much better. And something interesting about that too, when you were talking about writing and how some of the most beautiful pieces of art came out of great sadness, I noticed that I never really talked much about what was going on at work with my family. And the reason is because I couldn't explain it to them. And plus, sometimes things that happen are just downers and people don't want to hear it. But the people that I worked with, we talked about it all the time and we helped each other get through it. And we had different ways of supporting each other, whether it be through listening or laughter or anger, whatever it was, just helping each other. Because unless you worked there, you weren't able to explain it to anyone who wasn't there. Then at the same time, we were able to go through those hard moments and then be so happy when the good things happened. So I totally get that from working at the school that I did and feeling those opposite emotions and how you can have it at the same time. That is possible.
I relate to that just in parenting. There are so many highs and lows in everyday life with each one of my children that there are times where I just feel so blessed and emotional and grateful that I get to be their mother. And there are times that I feel so distressed and stressed that I am their mother. So I feel like the best things in our life have these ingredients side by side: the good, the bad, the ugly, the sad, all of it, the beautiful. And it creates a real full life. And he does a test in this. It's called the PANAS test, PANAS. The reason I spelled it is that when I was listening, I Googled it and I spelled it wrong. And I had to quickly hide my screen at soccer practice. I was like, oh my gosh, if anyone saw. But he goes through different emotions, positive and negative ones, such as scared or enthusiastic, alert or creative. And you go through and you rate on a scale from 1 to 5 how you feel. You rate yourself. And what was interesting about this is that it comes out pretty even for most people. And so there's a list of more negative emotions and a list of more positive emotions. And once you add up the score, they're not that far off typically for most people on average. So I had the thought that it's really interesting that at all times we probably feel a lot of these emotions at the same time, which is different than other studies have shown that you can't feel anxiety at the same time you feel gratitude. But he says you can. In the name of science, fight it out.
Square up,
Yeah,
scientists.
let's see. But what I was thinking, I'm going to agree with him that they can exist at the same time. I feel so many emotions at once. I can't even drop my kid off. There's a lot going on in my head. So I'm going to fight on his team for this one, that you can feel different emotions at once. But then I thought, if we are just aware of how we're feeling, then I bet we could better handle our emotions. So my thought was, if we are aware of what we're feeling, negative and positive, then we could focus on the ones that we want to feel more. And so I practiced this when I took the quiz myself yesterday. And I thought to myself that it is true. I was feeling a little bit stressed out about some things, but at the same time, I was feeling really happy. I was feeling really grateful. I was having a good time. I was watching Titus practice, which it really does bring me so much joy to watch that kid kick a ball around. And I realized that even though I had these negative feelings, that if I could just be more aware of the positive ones, then the percentage is going to go on the side that I give more attention to. So back to you talking about being grateful or ungrateful, that really does change our complete mindset. And what I thought was, in our moments of unhappiness, if we also noticed why we were grateful, why we were happy, then we were able to kind of adjust and lean towards the favor of more positive and happier feelings. It doesn't mean we have to be perfectly happy, but it does mean we can change our focus a little bit, recognize what we're grateful for, recognize the good feelings that we're feeling, and then we could just move on more happy, even in times of sorrow.
I agree with that because I have felt those emotions at the same time. I think I mentioned this before, that my family did have a house fire, and I put everything I owned, with the exception of my guitar, in a garbage sack, and I went to my brother's house. And I remember when I pulled into his driveway, he came running out of his house to help me carry everything into his house because he was nice enough to let me move in with him. I handed him the garbage sack, and then I picked up my guitar, and he goes, "What else can I carry?" And I was like, well, that's it. That's all I have. I realized something from that. Was I sad that the house burned down? Yeah, absolutely. But I also felt peace and I felt fine. In fact, after the house fire happened, I remember when my brothers got there, one of them got a magic marker or spray paint. And right when you walked in the back door, they wrote on the wall, "Welcome to Mom's marshmallow roast," which was not probably very nice, but it was kind of funny. Yes, we were sad, but on the flip side of it, being together with family made everything feel better. Even when my parents were taking turns being in the hospital, when I was there with just them, it felt like a heavy weight on my shoulders. Like I just felt like the weights were so heavy. I was just being pulled down to the floor in the hospital. But as soon as family or friends would come, it was as if they were also putting the weight on them. And so that weight was getting evened out in the room. So it wasn't quite as heavy. And that was usually done with just talking and laughing and remembering things. So a lot of those feelings that I had at the same time, did I feel sad and did I feel weighted down? Yes. But at the same time, there was so much peace and joy being together with family during those tough times and having them help lift that weight off my shoulders.
You've talked about this study before, but I rewatched the longest study that's ever happened with men from 1935.
Oh, yeah.
it is really so fascinating. They started the group off, and I'll just briefly go over it since we've talked about it before, but they took the group of men in the 1930s, and some of them came from Harvard. They were from wealthy families, and one of them even became a president of the United States. They also took a group from the most poor and devastated places in America, and they picked from both of these circumstances, and they followed their life. So before I go into that, I just want to add that they recently did another study where they asked millennials what they wanted out of their life. And 80% of them said they wanted to be rich. 50% of them said they wanted to be famous. So what was interesting is that the mention of I want to be happy wasn't really mentioned. It was money and fame.
Both of those are very temporary.
Yes, they are. But I think it's because I had this thought. I think people want that because they actually want happiness, but they think that's the key to happiness. And I thought it's really interesting that society creates happiness in a way of fame and wealth. Not very many of us are going to be famous and ultra rich. Therefore, it creates this idea that happiness is so far out of reach because fame and wealth are out of reach for a lot of people. But that's not what happiness is. And they found that from the study. They studied these guys for 85 years. So many of them are early 100s, late 90s. 40 of them are still alive. When they go back and they gather more information, they don't just gather it from the men in the study, but they talk to the wives, they talk to the children and the grandchildren. And they see across the board that what created a happy life had nothing to do with fame, had nothing to do with wealth, had very little to do with career. It was relationships. Period. They didn't add more. It was relationships. Happy, good relationships. Not perfect, but steady. Relationships that people worked for, marriages that they worked for, relationships with their children and neighbors and people from church. It was relationships. And I thought that was really interesting because we think happiness is out of reach, but it's actually within reach. Jordan Peterson has a book, The 12 Rules for Life. In it, he shares 12 rules for life. That's what he shares. In his book, For 12 Rules of Life, he shares 12 rules for
weird.
Life.
I didn't see that coming.
Keep tuning in for exciting twists and turns. I enjoyed this list because everything is in reach. Oh my goodness. Except for the first one, I'm now sitting up straight because it says, fix your posture. All of you listening, including ourselves, fix your posture.
I was way slouched.
Me too. Okay. Number 2, care for yourself the way you care for others. 3, stick with people who want the best for you. Improve your own game instead of playing others. Teach your children to abide by society's rules. Get your house in order before criticizing others. Number 7, focus on a higher purpose, not instant gratification. Find and live your personal truth. Learn to be a good listener. Define your problem precisely to make it manageable. Accept that inequality exists. Take time to appreciate the good things in life. Did any of those stick out to you? I'll tell you which one did to me. He said, define your problem precisely to make it manageable. Define your problem to me also means to be aware. When I thought about that, I thought also define your emotions, what you're feeling. Or what I thought would be helpful for this podcast episode on happiness is if we took time to break down our daily activities, like rate your activities. And I mean from walking your dog to carpool or commuting, your work. Look at your day, what you actually do, and think about how much happiness these activities bring to you. Let's say if you hate driving to and from work, you can make it more enjoyable. You could listen to some music. You could listen to an audiobook. Whatever we're doing, we can do something to make each activity more enjoyable. Or if something is bringing you straight misery, maybe there's a way to get rid of it. I just thought of everything I would want to get rid of and I can't. But maybe other people can get rid of theirs.
I agree with that because, again, going back to the classroom, there were moments where you could just tell that the students weren't having it. No matter how funny I was, no matter how good the lesson was, all they would do is just glare at me with a death stare. And sometimes that just happens. And on days like that, you need to be willing to adjust. And usually what I did was say, okay, we're just changing everything. And we'd have, I know this sounds silly, but we would color and talk for 30 minutes and get it all out so that everyone wasn't so grumpy. And you need to be able to read the room. And that includes in your own life. Read the room and figure out what will make it so you have that more lasting happiness. For our final thoughts, I found some current research and studies that show scientifically what happiness can do for us in our lives. First of all, money can only buy happiness up to about $75,000. And after that, it really doesn't matter. Next, most of our happiness is not determined by our genetics, but by our experiences day to day. Trying too hard to find happiness often has the opposite effect and could lead us to be overly selfish. Pursuing happiness with family and friends is more likely to be effective than any other methods. The pursuit of happiness is one place where we should consider ditching the SMART goals, Cydni.
I remember what those are.
Good job. It may be more effective to pursue vague happiness goals than more specific ones. Happiness makes us better citizens. Happiness leads to career success. The last one, there is a linear relationship between religious involvement and happiness. More commitment to faith gives us greater compassion. The more compassionate individuals are, the more likely they are to provide emotional support to others. And those who provide emotional support to others are more likely to be happy. So having that faith leads to being more happy because you're more considerate and compassionate to others, which goes back to President Gordon B. Hinckley, who asked that we look deeper for the good, that we still our voices of insult and sarcasm, that we more generously compliment virtue and effort. If we can truly remember who we are God's child, and the people that you're looking at and that you're sitting next to, they're also God's child. Let's treat each other like that, and that will bring more happiness to your life and to the lives of others.
Focus on the good and be the good. And we decided for our challenge that we would love for you to spend time thinking about the things in your life right now that bring you deep happiness and joy. And you might be surprised by the list. And you also might be surprised, as we both found, that as you take time to write them out, more will come to you. We made a goal of writing down 5, and I felt like I couldn't stop writing other ones that I thought of that just brought me so much joy. We're going to share some that we thought of for ourselves, and we challenge you to write down some of your own. Here are first, though, I asked my children. Titus, I asked him, what are 3 things that make you happy? He said, my family and my friends and claw machines. Please ask your listeners to do a fundraiser because my mom won't buy me one. He's asked for one for 2 years. I told him he could buy his own when he's an adult.
I agree.
Thank you. Rock said that he finds happiness in being good at stuff. Like if you peak in a video game and winning. And I said, that's only 2. He said, it doesn't matter. Just winning. That's it. Nothing else makes me happy. Iana, not that she became my favorite child at this moment, but she said parties, sleeping, and good food.
That's a good list.
I'm glad that none of them said being rich and famous. Only I did. All right. These are the things I thought of that sincerely bring me joy. Discovering a new song that I can't help but play over and over and over and over again on repeat while I clean the house uninterrupted.
Doing this podcast with Cydni.
Oh man, that was my next one. Oh no, I dropped my list so you can't see it. I was going to say it, but I'll say a different one since you said that one. I hate when people take yours.
Yeah, I know. It's rough, huh?
That's why you wanted me to start. You set me up for failure. You're out to get me today.
I was a good teacher.
All right. The times that I forget about all the chores that I need to do, and I actually just sit and enjoy my family, playing card games, laughing together, being completely ridiculous.
Diet soda.
Days when the caffeine hits extra hard.
Was that yours?
Yeah.
You stole mine again.
Well, sorry, it's there.
Okay. My heated beanie.
I knew you were going to say that. I almost said heated blanket. I didn't want to steal all of yours.
Thanks.
I actually had podcasting with you written down 5 times. I'm making up these other ones. Okay. The feeling of waking up when the day before I took great care of my physical, mental, and spiritual well-being. I love that feeling. It's happened like 4 times in my life. Feels good.
That's really good.
Thanks.
Taking my bra off at the end of the day.
So good. Nice. And then my last one is not forgetting to drop my children off at carpool.
That's a good one. I want to add music, my family, my friends, and knowing that there's a God that cares about me.
And I just want to add podcasting with Sher. Writing down the list made me happier. It did. I felt happier after.
Me
so
too.
we challenge you to write down your own. Spend time writing it down. Maybe do it as a family or with some friends and go out there and be happier. Hurrah.
This is our prayer.
From Cydni and Sher.
I'm forging my way through the tip top. I'm living drip, drip, drop. When eternity's plan, I just can't stop. I'm making my way through the drip, drip, drop.
You ready?
Am I ready? You're the one staring at your electronics.
Sorry.
Screen time is over, Sher. That I drove all the way.
Stole my pen.
Sorry.
It's okay.
I didn't even want to use it. I was just jittery. All right.
All right.
All right.
All right. That's too bad. That sucks. So anyway.
Weak. Oh, that's funny. Because I didn't mean it like that. I meant like, all right, brain work, maybe.
Yeah,
I
right.
don't even know what I meant.
I thought you were saying like, all right.
I don't even know. Someone take me home. Like, do I need to apologize for anything? Feels like I probably should. I'm sorry. Put that on repeat. I'm sorry. Listen to that.
I'll put that on here.
I felt personally attacked right then.
I apologize.
Did you too?
A little bit. Yeah. We don't need to know. TMI, Cydni. TMI.
I was like, dear heavens, what is this? So anyway, if you're going to Google it, be careful. Rudy's being good, but your vacuum is being bad.
I know. What are you looking at?
That's good.
Thank you. All right. Pursuing.
What are you looking at? Okay.
Have a teacher vibe going today really bad.
I'm looking away. Go ahead. Have a great week.